All right. I know we're all enjoying our food and our conversation, but if I could have your attention, we've got another fabulous panel of folks who are going to lend their expertise and their insights and take pity on them. They haven't had food, so keep it discreet down there with your delicious food. Don't show off. The title of this panel today is Educating South Carolina Women for the 21st Century Workforce. We have heard some really interesting discussions this morning about women's educational attainment in South Carolina and the fact that women are outperforming men at most levels across the state. And yet, that is not translating into necessarily higher paying jobs or equal paying jobs, nor is it translating into more economic opportunity and opportunities for advancement. So the question is, how do we get to our potential that we heard about this morning, $5.2 billion in annual revenue by 2025? If we can better translate educational attainment into career opportunities in the industries where there's growth and where there's a chance for women to really get ahead, make an impact professionally, and also achieve financial security and stability and great advancement for themselves and security for their families. So we're going to have a great conversation today with some fantastic panelists who have really diverse experience. I'm going to briefly introduce the four of them, but you also have bios in your program. Right here is Elizabeth Colbert-Busch. Elizabeth is the Executive Director of Corporate Business Development at the Clemson University Restoration Institute. She also serves on the Charleston School of Law Maritime Institute's Board of Directors, the World Trade Center, Charleston Steering Committee, and is a member of the Brookings Institute Metro Export Initiative. So really sits at this nexus of higher education and business in South Carolina and globally. To her right is Susan Pretulak, the Vice President of Economic Development for the South Carolina Technical College System. Susan is responsible for the oversight of the nationally recognized programs Ready SC and Apprenticeship Carolina. To Susan's right is Moryah Jackson, who is the Assistant Director for Diversity, Inclusion, and Community Engagement at the University of South Carolina. Go Gamecocks. She has served in higher education for over 10 years, advancing access, equity, and opportunity. And finally, at the other end of the table is Eddie Massey. Eddie is the founder of the Massey Global Innovation Foundation, an organization that uses STEM education as a tool for social justice. His organization focuses on teaching minorities, women, and rural students STEM and coding so they can become game changers in technology. Can we please welcome all these wonderful speakers today? Okay, so I gave such a brief introduction to you. I'd like to give each of you a chance to say a little bit more about what each of your institutions is doing to train, equip, and prepare young women and young men for the 21st century workforce in South Carolina. Just give us a little sense of what your organizations are doing. Elizabeth, would you like to start?
I'm Elizabeth Colbert-Busch. As you heard, I'm the Executive Director of Business Development and Community Affairs for Clemson University's Restoration Institute in Charleston, South Carolina. Clemson University, as many of you know, go Tigers football, but go Gamecock basketball women. Way to go, you guys. Way to go. Women bring it home. So what I do is, I used to be on the waterfront, as they say in terms. I was in the maritime industry for 21 years, and I was responsible for business development, P&L statements, business plan, marketing, and that sort of thing for the Southeast, the Gulf of Mexico, and the country of Mexico. And 9 years ago, I was approached by Clemson University to come and do some research with them for very typical things that we still hear about today: alternative forms of fuel, reducing cost of energy, all those things, and reducing your carbon footprint. Long story short, when I heard what they were doing at the Restoration Institute, building an engineering graduate degree program, environmental excellence, energy, water management, all these things, well, that's the coming economy. So when we're up here today talking about what's the next economy, how to prepare the workforce, we know where the economy's going on a global basis, right? So how do we prepare for this highly technical economy on a global basis? So I left OCL and I went to Clemson University, and we started to develop a program, the private-public partnerships that you all may be familiar with ICAR. Well, we did that same model in Charleston. So it's about bringing industry and academia to the table to prepare the workforce for this coming economy. And so I'm in Charleston at the former Naval Shipyard, and we are 4 hours from the main campus. But because we're a land-grant university, Clemson's required to do research, outreach, and academic engagement. So thank you very much.
Good afternoon, and I'm Susan Pretulak, the Vice President of Economic Development for the Technical College System. I would be willing to say that everybody in this room is probably fairly familiar with the mission of our technical college system. Our founding fathers, right from the beginning, wanted to create a system that would provide affordable and accessible education to essentially support the economic development of South Carolina. And that's a job that we do every day. We serve about 220,000 students on any given year, and they're roughly divided half and half between our credit side of the house and our non-credit side of the house. And I'm very pleased to say that 61% of the students we have in our system are women. So we've gone affordable, accessible, and high-tech jobs as part of that mission. But the part of the work of the system that you may not be as familiar with is the work of the Economic Development Division. There are two entities that are part of our division, which is essentially housed here in Columbia, but deploys itself around the state. The first of those is the granddaddy of economic development, READY-SC. We've been in existence for 54 years. Do some of you know? I see some shaking heads. That's good news. 54 years, we have had the same mission, and that's to assist companies that are either moving to South Carolina for the first time or expanding to recruit and train their production and hourly workforce. Ours is a showcase of marquee names. We've worked with the likes of BMW, we're working with Volvo, Mercedes-Benz Vans, GT Tire, and actually at this point in time, 105 companies are part of our scope of business. Half of those companies, roughly, are new companies, and half of them are expanding. So we continue to support not just added growth on the new front, but to support business and industry that's here in South Carolina already. The second entity in the Division of Economic Development is Apprenticeship Carolina. And there, Anne Marie Stieritz, who was the genius behind this, and my predecessor. We are the fastest growing apprenticeship program in the United States. We serve over 17,059 apprentices at this point for 859 companies. And this is an interesting statistic from our standpoint. We serve apprentices, 29% of them are women, and the national average is something like 6%. So we are really making some real headroads. I will also say, in terms of READY-SC, we serve about 4,500 people a year. That's probably going to change a little bit this year because we are really busy, but roughly between 32 and 38% of those on any given year are women as well. So that's a little bit about what we're doing. Moryah? Yeah.
I'm Moryah Jackson. I'm with the University of South Carolina, and I really want to focus on two specific programs and directly, hopefully, connect and involve you in these programs. As we know, women are going to college, earning college degrees at a higher rate than men. That's definitely happening at the University of South Carolina. But we really need to make sure we're equipping women with what happens after college. I'm so excited to share that the university has a program. I'm not sure if you've heard of it. It's called SC Smart Start. It's sponsored by the American Association of University Women. And I will let you know, ladies, so often our young women do not understand that they have the right, the ability, the credentials to negotiate their salary. I had the opportunity to talk to a group of young women last week, and they said, I can do that. I can ask for more. I don't have to accept what they offer. And I think that's one of the not easiest, but it's a way that we can really work to help close that wage gap, just simply asking for more money. Men do it all the time. Women want to make sure that they are absolutely qualified for this position. Men don't really question that. Women are happy or grateful that they've been offered a position. Men feel as though they deserve it, and they deserve $10,000 more. And so I'm really excited that the university has this program to help equip young women with the salary information, with the job market information to negotiate a salary that they actually deserve, that they have the credentials for. The other thing I want to share with you is a new program called Women Lead. It was actually started by a student, and it's a 6-week leadership development program where students come together to talk about what it means to be a woman in the workforce. And this is where I'm reaching out to you. If you're interested in speaking to that group of women about your stories, please reach out to me. We need to share with these young women what they're going to have to deal with and how to be prepared to handle certain situations in the workforce. I think that's one of the best ways for us to help our young women. So I'm looking forward to this panel discussion.
Hi, I'm Eddie Massey with Massey Global Innovation Foundation, formerly known as Artificial Intelligence in Action, so that name was too long. But what we do, we focus on STEM education. Primarily we teach youth and college students how to code. So there's a very major problem in our country right now. There are too many social media apps. What I mean by that is there are other problems that need to be solved. There's more that you can do with technology that we have access to. So your mobile phone has more power than the rockets that have gone to the moon. But we're making social media apps. One of the reasons we have that issue is because we don't have enough diversity in technology. So right now, about 22% of software engineers are women. So there are a select group of people choosing which problems are going to be solved on a day-to-day basis. And so that's a really major problem, because there are problems that 25-year-old white males cannot solve because they don't see the problems that you would see. So we need to make sure that women are involved and that at the table for innovation. The way we focus on doing that is through hosting after-school programs. We have about 8 programs with about 200 students in Orangeburg. We're teaching youth how to code. We also host workshops. A couple weeks ago, we brought Google, Yelp, Microsoft, a few other tech companies out to host a conference in Orangeburg where we taught our middle and high school students and also our college students gateways into software engineering. And we also now are working on curriculum development to continue to help bridge the divide. We really want to see more women empowered by using innovation and technology.
That's terrific. Thank you all for that overview. I want to hear about whether we need to work on getting women to show up for the training or educational opportunities that each of you are offering or providing. Is that a challenge, or is it not that they're not showing up, it's just that they're maybe opting into the kinds of programs or trainings that are not getting them maybe to where they could be?
Well, I would take a stab at that.
Yeah.
You know, I asked one of my folks to kind of pull some information for me, and then having seen Dr. Van Essen's PowerPoint, when we look at clusters of study within...
Right into the mic.
Right into the mic?
Yes,
Okay,
very
how's that?
close.
I'm usually pretty loud. When we look in clusters of study in the technical college system, and this is on both sides of the house, once again, on the credit side and on the non-credit side, the clusters with highest female enrollment, I've got to read them, I'm just not that smart anymore. Education and training, 96% of the students there are female. Health sciences, 87% female. Human services, 86% female. Finance, 75% female. If you look at which clusters have the lowest female enrollment, manufacturing, 6%. If you think about the economy of South Carolina and what we're building right now, that's a very concerning statistic. Transportation, distribution, and logistics, which you were referring to earlier, one of the largest ports in this part of the world, 9% female. Architecture and construction, we were talking a little bit about that earlier today, 10% female. Science, technology, engineering, and math, 16% female. We really aren't attracting women students into areas of our economy that we need people in. And I'm a person who looks at pipeline every day. Those are some serious concerns.
Moryah, you also mentioned that within the university that you have higher rates of women enrolling, but you said not necessarily in the departments or the majors that will offer them the most opportunity to excel in the workforce. Can you say more about what you're seeing?
Absolutely, and I think we do have women who are showing up, but if you think about, go back in your experiences, when did you decide, this is what I want to be when I grow up? What messages do you receive about the fields that you're in? And I'm going to go way back to when you're little. I had a younger brother. For Christmas, he would receive tools and hammers and building games, and I would receive doll babies. I don't necessarily know if it was because I wanted a doll baby, but that's what I received. And so when you're in school, then you're in school and you talk about how girls are socialized. What are girls studying? Are they being told that they can do well in math? Or are they receiving messages that, well, girls aren't that good at math. Girls take care of others. They're teachers. So you think about these messages that you receive when you're in school, and you think about the training that young women receive, and by the time they're ready to go to college or any post-secondary opportunity, have they taken enough advanced math, enough science? Have they learned how to code? What are the fields that they were involved in? And then we see that, again, talking about the pipeline, what are we doing to build this pipeline? I'm so happy that in 2017, there are images all over the place about women coding, women in science, women in technology. They have images of women in these roles, whereas before those images may not have been there, and it wasn't something that they were encouraged to do. So I think it's important that we expose young women to other opportunities because they don't know about advanced manufacturing, or they don't know what the aerospace industry is because they have a rather limited view of career opportunities. And once we expose them to these options and these opportunities, they'll be there and they'll do well because they often outperform male students. So we just have to make sure we expose them and we encourage them and help them along the way.
If I may add to that, I think we need to start, and I agree completely with what you two have just mentioned, but I think also too what we need to start is, where are we in the economy? What are the jobs going to be? Are our students, our female students, aware of what those jobs are going to be? How far down the road are the jobs going to be what they are? What are the economic clusters? What is the state of South Carolina's focus and mission? We're an export manufacturing state. That's what South Carolina's focus is, export manufacturing. Enormous growth in the science fields, enormous growth in the logistics field, enormous growth in the IT field. This is where the economy is going. So when we talk about coding for kids and we talk about science, it's such an important component that we start from the moment. We heard earlier in the panel, Mary Beth, that you were on, about cradle to career in Charleston. It's before the child is even born. We have to begin this pipeline, and we have to pay attention to what does that child need from the moment they're born all the way through to their career. It's an incredible program, and I think I heard that they were going to start moving it to Columbia, too. I'm not sure. Have you all heard that? Have you heard that? So I think the baseline is, what's the foundation? What is the economy? What are the jobs? And what is the gap that's missing that we need to fill? When we look at the energy sector alone, we're being told by the utility companies that 60% of their workforce is eligible for retirement in the next 6 years. 60% of their workforce. Now, I'm just talking about the utility business, but this is all engineering, this is all science, this is all manufacturing. So we have to make sure that we begin from before that child is born, that female child, all the children, that we know as the parents and as the leadership and as the community, what do we need to do to make sure that you have everything in the toolbox that you need to be successful?
Yes, Eddie, please.
In addition to, we haven't had a lot of trouble recruiting young women to come to our programs. But what we do find is when they're ready to get into career, even through personal experience, they're not prepared for the cultural shock for working in technology. So the way, for instance, we stay in Silicon Valley, the culture is shaped in such a way that, you're not supposed to be here. Uber just released their diversity report, and it was 64% for all fields, not just engineering, but all fields are male. So in addition to the educational training, there has to be preparation for the culture that women will face when they get into these careers. Because many leave, whether it's the major or the job, they leave the industry because, I don't feel like I'm welcome here, and so I can take my talent somewhere else and do something where I feel like I'm welcomed and I can make a better impact.
It also seems that sometimes we need to reach the parents, too, of kids. If we're talking about cradle to career, we can't forget about the parents who may have missed out on exposure to these types of opportunities, or just may not know what the options are available to their children and how to support them throughout that process. So taking a whole family approach might be helpful, too. So Eddie, I want to pick up on that and talk about STEM, which has come up a few times today. And you talked about culture being a barrier for women sometimes when they get to the workforce. Are there other things that are particularly challenging that you see from your vantage point in that field?
Yeah, I think so. I did my first 2 years of college at Case Western in Ohio, and I was a computer science and applied math double major. And so I'd be in the room, and I'd turn around, and it wouldn't bother me that I would be the only African-American student. But when someone makes a joke, right, when somebody kind of drops something, it's like, oh, that's how you really feel. And so there may be maybe one other female computer science student in the room, and so the same things would happen to them. So the culture, I think, is a hindrance to academic preparation. Because if you don't feel like you're welcomed in a particular environment, you're not going to be able to learn as efficiently as you would like. So I believe it's really, so we've hosted a few hackathons recently, and so far, actually, all of our young women have won all the competitions that we've done. So I don't think the understanding or the skill set is the issue. I think we have to really continue training, continue educating, but we have to have these conversations about culture. We have to advocate. So we brought an engineer from Google, and she shared her experience just being a female software engineer, out at Google. So those conversations have to happen. We have to advocate in companies about diversity. We have to have these conversations, or women will be in positions of power but not have the support they need to maintain or be effective.
Laura Varn spoke earlier about that 30% tipping point when it comes to women on corporate boards, being able to sort of realize some of the bottom line economic impacts, and maybe we're looking at a similar tipping point in other areas where if you get to that 30% participation, it sort of hastens progress and makes it a more welcoming environment for everybody and also more productive. Susan?
Well, the thing that I always have in front of me is that most of the recruitment and training that we are doing is somewhere between the certificate level and a 2-year associate's degree. So many of the folks, men and women, that we are working with are going immediately to an hourly type job somewhere. And I've had the experience myself of walking onto a manufacturing floor or walking into a large warehouse and finding myself maybe one of 5 women there. And so I would say that there are not a lot of, with the possible exception of healthcare, on the technical arenas in manufacturing, IT, as I see it at the hourly level, there are not a lot of female role models. And if you're a woman who's walking into an environment where there's a lot of welding going on, you might be the only woman in the facility. So it can be pretty awesome in not a good way to be in a small cohort or a non-existent cohort. Just not a lot of models for women along that line.
From the business perspective, the cultural change we talk about, the cultural change also comes from the top down, from the corporations themselves. I'll give you an example. First of all, how many of you in this room, quick show of hands, have ever felt like you were in a room where you didn't belong or you weren't accepted? All right, okay. Know that we're all here, we've all been there with you, so just keep moving, keep pressing on. What's important is accessibility, and having accessibility for our women to know that what the opportunities are, where they are, how to get there, and how to get through it, right? So it's accessibility. So what some of the corporations are doing, and I'll use one example, with a company that we work with at Clemson, we do this private-public partnership, and one of our major customers, or one of our major partners, I should say, is a company called GE Power and Water and GE Renewable. They're in the Greenville area. So they've come to Clemson and they've said by 2025, they want to have, which is not far, they want to have 50% of the women, 50% of their engineers in the entire company globally, they want to be women, right? So now this is an internal cultural shift from the corporate level that will drive this. So what does that mean? Well, they will go to, and I'll use Clemson as an example, they'll go to our Women in Science and Engineering, and they'll speak to them and they'll encourage them. So we have women engineers from GE coming in to speak to our young students. And so it encourages them, because no matter where you are, to some degree, and I think there's a statistic, maybe you know this, Susan, but there's a statistic about the number of women who actually go into an engineering field but they don't graduate from that engineering field. Do you know what you got that number there?
I don't have that.
Okay.
Maybe next time I'll bring that.
There's a number there somewhere.
There's a number there.
But so they'll go in, and then there's this feeling of not being accepted, or they don't want to do the engineering, or whatever the reason is, then they step back. So we lose them even though they go in. That cultural change is going to happen, and it's going to be driven from the corporate level as well. So from the community level, from the academic level, but also from the corporate level when they're pushing to drive women, because they're going to have this gap. They're going to have this employment gap that they need to fill, so they're really driving women into the sciences.
That's what I was going to ask as a follow-up, Elizabeth. Is it because companies recognize this worker shortage that Dr. Von Nessen talked about, and they know they have to do things differently in order to fill that?
That is one of the reasons is you're going to have this huge gap of the baby boomers are retiring, right? The baby boomers are retiring, so they're going to have this huge gap. And how are they going to fill that gap? Well, they have to go to every single resource that they can find, and they have to make sure that they're educated and ready, skilled workforce ready to go, from the technical side all the way up through the graduate degree program.
As we're talking about culture and businesses, I also want to hit on something that I think is very important. When we think about women in the workforce, we also need to have conversations about paid maternity leave. We also need to have conversations about flexible scheduling. More often than not, women are taking care of children, and they're also taking care of adult elder relatives or parents. And when you talk about the culture of a company, is it acceptable for a woman to take that leave? Is it acceptable for her to not come in early or not stay late? What type of messages are we sending, and how are we excluding women when we're not taking into consideration their lives outside outside of work as well. And these are very demanding fields. And so if you are the only woman in the room and there are 10 other men and you're the one that has to leave, what message does that send to the company? How does that make you feel about your confidence level as well? And you have to make these hard decisions every day. So I think it's important that we talk about how do we ensure companies are responsive to the needs of 21st century women, and how do we change the workforce in that regards. I also want to jump back a little bit more in terms of the culture of South Carolina. My friend Beth DeSantis is here with the South Carolina Campaign to Prevent Teen Pregnancy. And when you know that 1 in 4 South Carolina girls become pregnant before their 20th birthday, you have to ask, how does that impact their earning potential? What are we doing in regards to making sure young women are aware of how a child will impact their life, how it will impact their earning potential? I firmly believe when you educate women, you educate communities, you strengthen families, and you're able to keep communities out of poverty. And the last thing, and then I'll pass it on, we live in a state where it's acceptable to have a minimally adequate education. We cannot accept that. What can we do from our level to ensure that we have a high standard? This is a knowledge and innovation economy, and we want women at the table, but when you are already locking in rural children that don't have access to education, you're locking them into a life of poverty by saying this is just enough, and we know the opposite is true. So what can we do? And I like to be, I like to focus on solutions. I urge you to get involved with your local school. You can be involved with the School Improvement Council. You can step up and speak out at the school board. Make sure you're supporting teachers. We may not have change from the top down, but we definitely need to make our voices heard and let people know that we have to have strong communities and strong schools that support education for the 21st century.
That's great. I want to ask one more question, and then I want to let the audience have a little bit more time to ask questions, because we had to cut folks off earlier, and we might again. But let's just be really practical in terms of where each of you sit. What do you think is one thing that we could be doing differently to maximize the potential that women have to contribute to South Carolina's economic growth, as well as their own economic well-being and their families' well-being? What's one practical thing that we could be doing differently?
One, that's really hard. We're all looking at each other. One, we only get one. I think I have 20 of them written here.
We'll get that from you later. Don't worry.
That's with the numbers here. I guess if I had to pick one, I would love to see us increase the use of apprenticeship. It has been proven here in South Carolina already that this is a great tool for advancing women. And I want to come back to that in just a second. And not just apprenticeship for women as adults, but for youth as well. We need to be engaging students from the time they reach high school in meaningful, life-changing, wage-paying, educational attainment type experiences. And as we've shown already here in South Carolina, we're doing better than the national average by using that particular modality. So I would like to see every business have a woman apprenticeship. I would really like to blow away the Department of Labor more than we already have. So that would be my one thing, but there are a couple others. Who's next?
One thing that we could do is, I think we really need to give our teachers more support. I think we need to support our teachers from pre-K all the way through high school, and particularly in the elementary school level, before children are in 3rd grade. As we all know, the reading level by 3rd grade, if you're not there, will determine the success in life. And there's a staggering statistic, which is very concerning, and we all need to be aware of it. And this statistic is, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but this is the last I saw, prisons will go out and they will see what the reading level is of 3rd graders to determine how many prison cells they need to build. Mm-hmm. That is shameful. That is absolutely unacceptable. and to have a minimally adequate education for our children, how dare we do that? This is what we need to do to help our girls. This is what we need to do to help our women. This is what we need to do to help our children all together. The best thing we can do for our state, for our jobs, for our education, for our children is to give them the best education that they can possibly have, because it's the only thing that no one can ever take from you.
I just wrote an article, Why I Don't Trust Silicon Valley to Recruit Minorities or Women. I don't really believe that we can rely on a lot of these companies to help engage and get women involved in innovation. They have the money, they have the resources, but here I am getting 2 to 3 hours of sleep running a small organization to get more women involved in technology. So I believe the solution, one takeaway, is grassroots. If you know a girl who's interested in technology, make sure she has whatever she wants, whatever she needs. If she needs a mentor, you don't know how to find a mentor, I'll give you my card, we'll find somebody, because it's that critical. The companies are not going to do it. I've talked to them, I've asked for money for our programs, and if they don't get a return on investment in 2 to 3 years, a lot of times they're not going to do it. No matter what they say about the diversity reports or whatever, I've talked to them, they don't want to move the money around. So the only solution, I believe, is that the approach has to be grassroots, girl to girl, woman to woman. They have to see what's available. They have to see what's possible.
I'm like Susan, we only have to do one. I have a lot. But I will piggyback somewhat off of what Elizabeth said. We have learned so much about brain growth and human development, and we know that early childhood education is a solid investment. I personally would like to see the state of South Carolina invest in early childhood education, particularly for girls. When you, again, educate women and young women and you ensure that they are developing at those mile markers, that's the best way to ensure long-term success, and I think we need to invest in that. We owe that to our women and our families and our community.
Thank you all so much. We want to let you all ask questions or share your ideas and perspectives. Is anyone, can anyone send this around? Tatika, I saw you first. I'm going to hand it to you.
Hi, I'm Tatika. I have a question for you. So there's, no matter what state you live in, specifically even, I guess we'll focus on South Carolina, there's always the push for getting involved and the youth, and also, but for people right here in this room who want to get involved, or they want to do two things: one, break over the lines of what their specific industry is that they're focused in, and they want to go into another industry, or if they're new to the area and they want to get involved. What recommendations do you have for breaking past the cliques? To get into the other industry that you want to do, and being welcomed into that versus having to work so hard to get in the doors, because emails don't always work. People can pick and choose to respond if they want to. Networking sometimes works, but that means that the person has to take one for the team and play, like I've been told this before, like I have to feel confident in you to take one of my good to cash it in for you. But what do you suggest for anyone who's wanting to cross over in any of the industries that y'all are in, or anything that you've seen for maybe youth coming up, or for any of the women in the room that want to break those barriers for the workforce?
Let me just take a quick stab at that. I can't emphasize enough the importance of networking, right? So, and networking not just internally at your job, at the work where you are, but outside of that. How involved are you in the whatever industry you're in, whatever the business community, the academic community, the nonprofit community? How active are you in, and I'm not saying you personally, but all together. One of the things that women do so well is connect. One of the things that women do so well is network. One of the things that women do so well is listen and understand and be inquisitive. This is what we do so well, right? So I would encourage, one of the things you can do to try and go from one bridge to the other is to network outside of your comfort zone. And go out to these community events, go out to these business meetings, go out to these conferences, and meet and greet, and don't be shy. It's, I know, easier said than done, but there's nothing like a face-to-face handshake.
And it's a little bit different, perhaps, for the demographic of workers that we work with the technical college system, and specifically with WREN and Apprenticeship Carolina. But I would say that if you're thinking about changing a career, maybe going to a different industry sector at an hourly level, there are plenty of opportunities now that are really being funded tuition-free to take different kinds of credentialing. Perhaps, you know, today you are a CNA, and there are opportunities to perhaps add a certificate onto that, which might allow you to do something different, or to just venture to another arena. I think you have to be a little bit more creative if you're an hourly worker at a technician level, because the constraints of your job won't necessarily allow you professionally to network the way you might if you were in a professional career, but looking also for opportunities in your community to volunteer in different settings so that you can meet and greet people. It's a little trickier, but it can be done.
I'd also say joining professional organizations for technology, maybe Women in Science and Engineering, WISER. National Society of Black Engineers has a group for women. There's also like a lot of GroupMe and Slack communication channels that you can join and find people who are influencers in the field that you're looking to get in. I know that's how it is with tech a lot. I'm not sure so much with other industries, but there's a lot of different contacts in there that you may be able to find and send them a message, or just get involved in the community and see what type of events are coming up. I know Charleston has a pretty big Charleston and Tech Slack communication channel. So there, I would look into that as well.
I do want to add something. Women are natural problem solvers. We do not let challenges stand in our way. And so I'm really big on, if you want to go into another field, you need to add value and show how you're solving a problem, and tell people about it. I think for women, a lot of times we don't toot our own horns, we don't brag about what we do, but I think if you can show where you can add value and solve a problem, I think that helps tremendously with being able to take those transferable skills and go into another career field or industry.
You know, these all bring up really good points. We actually recently did a survey of people who had their undergraduate degree, and again, I'm talking bachelor's. So they had their undergraduate degree, and we took a survey and said how many would want to get their graduate and postgraduate degree. Well, 86% of the survey said that they wanted to get their graduate degree. 63% of all of them said they wanted to get it in a different field than what they were in. So this speaks directly to what your question is. So how do you address that? If you want to get your master's degree or you want to get a PhD, but you don't want to have it in the field that you're in. So now they're beginning this discussion about something called stackable certificates. And so in these stackable certificates, you can say, okay, I want to get a certificate in this area, which is completely outside of what you do, but it might be in the area where you want to move to. So you start building a certificate here and add another one, and then you stack them, and eventually you get a group of stackable certificates that eventually become potentially your master's degree. So it's really customizing. It's a way to customize your graduate degree work, and that's something that's really in deep discussions right now, isn't it?
Yes, we're doing it. We're also doing that at the technical college level to allow folks to go from perhaps a certificate in welding to an associate's degree in welding, or a certificate in as CNA, but getting to their 2-year nursing degree. Yes, absolutely. Which also allows them to transition later then to 4-year college and university. So we're looking for that pathway. And I think the thing that's most important about that for women is I don't know if this is a word, incrementality. Incremental? You like it? I like it. Oxford, let's see if they like it as well. But the ability to bite off little pieces of education to push your career forward, I think, is really important.
And then I promise this will be the end of it. I promise. But then when you think about the stackable certificate in a field where you want to move, and then you pull that private-public partnership group together, and then you have the industry who's watching who's taking these certificates, it's a way to introduce yourself into that other arena.
Good afternoon again. So my expertise is underachievement, poverty, at-risk families. I've been doing this for 13 years, so I'm all too familiar with the demographics you were mentioning. And I can tell you, I see this and I witness it every single day. Little preschoolers talking about their dads being in jail, poverty, coming to school without breakfast, many, many things like this. 68% of African American children are born to mothers without college degrees. 68%. I know moms who have had children from 3 different fathers who are absent from that home. That's staggering. So when you're talking about a woman whose salary is $22,000 and she has 3 children, she's a single mom, she's not going to read to her children. It's just a numbers game. That's not going to happen. So my heart goes out to these women who want the best for their children, and yet there's a disconnect about what we're talking about, because we've been talking about the culture and the mindset, yet most of us are middle class or upper middle class, and we're in a position where we can talk about that. What we really want to target is the younger ages. The achievement gap is evident as early as age 3. Most statistics focus on age 5, but it's apparent at age 3. And I see this all the time, and I do parenting workshops and things like that about how to fire the neurons in the brain. So I know we have legislators here, corporate executives, people in nonprofits. We really need to focus on pre-K, early education. And Nobel laureate James Heckman in economics 2005 said for every $1 invested, we get $7 back as a society when we invest in early childhood education. And it really has to do with investing in the underachieving, the lowest segment of our society, if you will. That sounds crude, but you know what I mean demographically. So the prison pipeline that you mentioned, Elizabeth, this is the cure. And then I wanted to suggest things, Mr. Massey, like you could target African American churches if you specifically want to recruit girls. Go to African American churches and speak to those moms, because really they are looking, I know this, they are looking for summer programs for their children. That would be low cost. And I know then you have a funding issue about how to sustain that program, but it was just a thought that I had as a possible solution. The other thing is household income in South Carolina is $49,000 something, average household income, and college tuition is a big problem for many, many families. But if you have a daughter or child studying in the science areas, that tuition is $1,000 more, because then you've got labs, and that can be a lot for a family. And many students are paying their own way through student loans or working, so $1,000 to a 20-year-old is a lot of money. Just something to think about corporate-wise, or at the legislative branch. But I think the lottery money is helping many, many families. So, thank you. Just some statistics I wanted to share. Thanks.
Thank you. Since we have only a couple of minutes left, can we take a couple of rapid-fire questions and then let the panelists respond to the ones they feel they would respond to?
I'm from AUW, and I just sponsored a STEM conference for 8th graders and up. And you talk about, yes, getting girls into STEM, but by middle school, they're not that excited about math. They also are not taking the math courses that prepare them for STEM. How do we solve that?
Okay. Can we take one or two more questions quickly, and then you all can respond?
Really quick, so,
Okay, rapid fire round.
Is that okay? We do two questions at once, and then you all can answer.
I have 2 things. One, I'd like to speak, Tika, if she's still here, go to the highest person in the organization. None of this lateral crap. Going to your peer in an organization helps you not at all. Go as far as you can go. and ask for a job from the highest person you can find, always. Number two, how many people in this room are willing to pay more money in taxes to fund education for children, okay? All right, then you need to be out there telling people that taxes need to be raised for this purpose, because otherwise we can't get any money to fix our roads. They will never give you money for this early education. It isn't going to happen, ladies, until you get out there and ask for more money. Period. End of it. I don't need any response. I know I'm right on that one.
Military's jumped up 30%. Pharmacy flipped. While I watched it, accounting flipped. Is there any thought about, do we target some occupations and flood women in there because that might flip the culture?
I have a quick question. I'm curious as educators, what your thoughts are on the current Secretary of Education's position on throwing voucher and charter programs and how that could affect the state like South Carolina that already struggles at being at the bottom of our list nationally and also has such a strong rural population. I'm just curious what your thoughts are on charter voucher programs.
Okay, so we've got a handful of questions about our education system, reaching underserved populations, and getting more kids to stick with STEM after they've started.
Educating, keeping women in STEM. So after 5th grade, it needs to be engaging education for mathematics. So instead of just learning calculus, it needs to be applied. So we found that's why we focus on teaching computer science and coding, because it's directly applicable, and you have a better chance there. Really quick with the voucher, not a big fan. One of the biggest reasons that there's a gap for STEM education is because of improper preparation for mathematics, and so we need more funding in the schools to have strong math programs. Like my high school didn't even have calculus, and so you try to be an engineering major, and it's difficult.
Well, I would pick the answer, ought we target? Yes, I think we should. The only thing I would say about the targeted approach, we did a targeted approach for entry-level manufacturing. It was funded by the General Assembly, was very successful. We did very well in terms of recruiting women and getting them trained and into entry-level programs. The real problem for me with that shotgun kind of approach is sustainability. What happens when the money runs out? So it's got two sides to it, a light side and a dark side, but we've had success when we've been able to do that.
I'll give you a case study, a successful case study in the Charleston area. The Charleston Metro Chamber of Commerce, obviously the business side of the community, the Tri-County community, Charleston, Dorchester, and Berkeley County, they decided that because of the apprenticeship model, how important the apprenticeship model was, how successful the apprenticeship model was, that they were going to work with the business community to begin a thing called Accelerate Greater Charleston. And in Accelerate Greater Charleston, they began with 6 high schools. They're now up to 62 high schools. And those 62 high schools specifically have targeted industry areas like computer science, engineering, tourism, these things, very specifically focused on that. And so what happens is with this apprenticeship program, it's a great model, and it's an important model to feed into the technical schools, right? So in their junior year, they go to this career academy, and through the career academy, they decide what direction they want to go in. And so then the chamber, the business community in the Charleston Tri-County area, the business community funds through scholarships for these children to go to school and take classes at Trident Tech while they're still at school, but then they align themselves with a company. So we'll have a company that will say, I want to hire 3 apprentices. And so the chamber, through a fundraising effort, through the business community, they raise the money, they pay for the tuition. That tuition goes to Trident Technical College, and those children, when they graduate from high school, are already in Trident Tech, and they're already well within their associate's degree, and they graduate with a job. It's a really good model. To your point, that's a really successful model, and it actually just got national recognition.
It did. In fact, it started 3 years ago with 7 companies and about 10 kids. They just had their informational session. This is year 3. they had planned to have about 500 parents and kids all together to come to find out about this program. And they had over 1,000 people show up for that information session. If you want to go see something really inspirational, go to the Apprenticeship Carolina website and look at their signing day, which is a lot like an athletic signing day. It's been a really exciting, targeted kind of thing.
Just a really quick comment. When we talk about targeted occupations, in my opinion, I really think we need to target our elected offices. We do not, women do not have a seat at the table. We need to be there where these decisions are made, and it's so important for you to be involved at whatever level. When women run, they can win, and that's how we change what's going on in our state. So I encourage you, run at your local level, run at your state level, run at the national level. We need to be there so we can make these decisions and we can make the lives better for everybody, not just for women.
Yes, I think we should close.